So I downloaded this drumless track for Dream Theater song, which has basically the music only, and then also the drums, the original drum tracks. And then I basically played on top of this drumless track with my drums, with the mix I did. It sounds like this basically. As I basically did this drum cover, there was no editing for the playing, except that I played this in a couple of different parts and then chose the best take and went with them. But I didn't use any samples, for example, for bass drums or then for the snare drums, in order to push myself to make the actual, like a natural sound, how I'm able to basically develop the actual natural sound of the drums. And also I think now, once I had this tuning session, for example, with Mr. Gas Lipstick, I also improved the drum sound for the snare especially a little bit, and I think for the toms as well. But for the snare, it's starting to get a little bit more closer to what I'm looking for. It is using though quite a bit of like the reverb to bring like basically liveliness and depth to the sound. Let's first check the bass drums. And then within the all. There comes basically more depth and liveliness from the room mic, and the bass drums without any of the effects, like that, and then with the effects on, brings a little bit compression, EQ from certain aspects, which I thought improved the sound in the whole thing. A little bit of compression, add a bit evenness to the playing, to the sloppy playing. And for the snare drum, I did add basically reverb to add more like, it does eat a bit the sound, but it brings more like this liveliness of the room to it without the reverb. Yeah, and EQ, raising up it like higher frequencies and trying to a little bit eliminate unwanted ringing tones of the snare. So snare without basically effects, and then with the effects. And of course from the room mic comes also a big part of the drum snare drum sound. Kind of adds kind of like more liveliness and body to it. The room mic for sure isn't the optimal one, which I have. It's only one room mic there, which I have, and then I've been basically compressed it, or like EQ'd it quite the fuck out of it. Unwanted like cymbals, and then some boominess, I think, from there. And actually, that's basically how it sounds like with these effects, and then without the effects basically. So I kind of like added more like warmth and more body to the whole mix from the room mic. Maybe there's better ways to improve and to utilize and get more out of the room mic as well, but that's basically how I was able to somehow get something more addition to the mix from the room mic. Let me know in the comments if you have some ideas how to utilize better this room mic sound, which I have. And then the cymbals, the overheads, basically they have been quite heavily EQ'd away the lower frequencies and also the snare part. So it basically adds just a little bit of addition to the and crispiness to those cymbals. A little bit like makes the cymbals pop up. For sure, let me know in the comments if you see some horrible things, like for example, this isn't really healthy way to likely treat the overheads, but with my limited knowledge and ways, this was how I was able to get most out of these overheads mics without messing up the sound of the snare and other parts in the way I built now this mix. this was how I was able to get with this notice and with my skills. I normally haven't done it like this, but for this mix, I needed to make it so that they have been separated all the tom parts, because the way I built this mix this time, there was so much bleed in the tom mix, in the tom tracks, that I needed to basically, instead of using gates, I basically decided to clean up the tom tracks, so only the toms remain in those tracks. So then it basically gets kind of like blended in to the overall mix without needing to basically mess around with the gate settings, which basically eats the sound, and kind of like I'm not able to that well control how long I want the toms to be ringing. So basically, if I hadn't done it, then where there's no toms played, then basically the cymbals would have come through in the mix too much. So this gave me more control to have kind of like more exact tom mix which I want without it affecting basically the cymbal sounds. And I have basically EQ'd them, raised basically the higher frequencies of it, and then added some reverb to kind of have more spacious sound than what I'm getting basically at the moment from the room where my drums are. And also like cutting down some of the parts quite brutally even, and then without the effects. And then with the effects. More like hi-fi in my opinion at least. They blend quite nicely to the mix without basically cutting out or kind of like coming distinctively present when the gate would have basically kicked in. And then the rest of the drums, as much they bleed without the actual tom mics. But with the tom mics, I get them basically more present to the mix. And this has basically overall EQ, raising some of the higher frequencies, adding reverb, and a limiting to kind of like make it more somehow compressed, I would say. And with the toms. And without the main compressions and without the main effects for the wall drum sound. Kind of adds more punch to it and maybe more clarity. In the wall context, it basically sounds like this. That's basically with my drums, and then with Mr. Mike Portnoy's drums. Pretty cool sound. Legendary stuff. And then basically my sounds compared. As you can see here, for example, I tried to also track the tempo of the song, which quite a lot like changes during the song, which I'm not sure was it a good idea, because then a little bit basically if I played with the click, it kind of like leaned me to a bit like different route than the backing track. I should have maybe now on hindsight focused more on the playback sound without the click, but with such better like monitoring. I basically on real time track then the different changes in tempos. We change it like from a couple beats per minute to maybe 8 beats per minute in quite nicely like fluent way. And then the original legendary stuff. Those like What are those octobans? Pretty cool sounding things. Wish I had those, but have to go what you have with. So that's basically a walkthrough of my mix of this song, and both the drums only version and then this whole like a drum cover with the background music is there on the YouTube channel. Check it out how it sounds there. But this is basically how I mixed this drum cover. And also I had in this whole mix, I had basically a tweak. It's kind of toned down the backing track with this multi-band compressor by FabFilter. I just tried out these different things, and like then I figured out the mastering, narrowband dynamics. I think I tweaked a little bit some of these zones to have it like sit more better, my drum sound to this overall audio mix. And also overall I have, let me close this other one. I have like a limiter which basically tones down these snare transients, which kind of otherwise would pop out and sound like worse, but it kind of compresses them down. And then there's EQ, this kind of like a shape, which I figured out basically but just by testing. It felt better. Not big of a difference, but at some point I did it and left it. And that's basically how the whole together master mix has been created. So, great song, great playing by Mr. Mike Portnoy, and I tried to basically make a tribute to that and learned a lot from certain like a root mix for the like cross-handed kind of things, like how to do like accents with like a left hand, for example, and the combinations with feet, especially in this mid part. Good shit. Sounds pretty decent to me. It's a working process. Let me know in the comments if you figure out some ways to improve the mix based on what I showed here. I don't know, will I make more drum covers maybe at some point, and likely this will be the base for it. And depending on the sound, like and the current situation and the song what I'll be playing, likely it will be again a new iteration of this mix which I have here. Thanks a lot for joining, and let me know in the comments what you thought about the mix. We'll see you soon.